tá? O principal motivo dessa reunião hoje é nós conhecermos um pouco mais dos comitês que existem na SWE. Tanto os affinity groups, que ela comentou já aqui rapidamente, quanto os próprios comitês, né? Porque quando a gente recebe lá o material de eleições e tal, sempre vem essas algumas dúvidas, tá? Mas quais são os comitês? Como eu faço para fazer parte? Como funcionam? O que cada um é responsável por, né? Então, que a ideia é realmente trazer todas essas informações para vocês e um bate-papo, né? Então, de apresentação mesmo vai ser bem curta, e daí a gente tem um bate-papo, conversa, se tiver dúvida, aproveitar, né, que a gente tem essa chance. Vai ser em inglês, né? Rachel está participando com nós, então vai ser em inglês a sessão. Mas se vocês quiserem enviar aqui no chat perguntas em português, a gente faz toda a tradução para ela, então fiquem bem à vontade. A Flávia já comentou dos 3 pontinhos, que tem como colocar a tradução para português, com o que a Rachel está falando, vai aparecer para vocês ali do ladinho a tradução. Então, fiquem bem à vontade, espero que vocês gostem aí e aproveitem bastante a sessão.
Reforçando só 3 pontinhos, ativar legendas e depois configurações, nos mesmos 3 pontinhos, configurações, e aí lá embaixo vai ter ativar tradução simultânea. Então, são 2 passos.
Legal. Obrigada, Flávia. Então, pessoal, Rachel, I was just giving some initial information that the session would be in English, but they can use the translation option in this tool, and that they can also put the questions if they have in the chat in Portuguese. We will translate it for you. We really appreciated, Rachel, you putting this time to share all this great information with us. We really wanted to have, as an organization, to have more diversity in our committees, and we really also wanted to make sure we are represented in the committee. So it'll be very important for our region to understand more about the committees, what they do, how they can get more involved. I just mentioned in Portuguese, and I'll just say in English now as well, this like an open conversation, just so they can interact as well as questions when they have. So we make sure that people is fully participating and understanding on the committee. So I would just give a quick brief introduction about Rachel. So you already can see in your screen, but Rachel is a principal director at the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, California, where she manages a team responsible for the integration of multiple space and ground programs. In previous roles, Rachel led the aerospace team supporting the production, launch, and on-orbit testing of 3 high-value communication satellites, provided technical leadership, and supported strategic development of international agreements between the United States Air Force and other nations, and spent several years as a system engineering working on national security launches. Within SWE, she's a senior life member of SWE. She joined the society as a student at the University of Southern California. She has led several leadership roles in SWE at all levels, including chair of the Collegiate Leadership Coaching Committee, region governor, LA section president, and the director of advocacy. Rachel is a recipient of the SWE Distinguished New Engineering Award, and also the WE Local Elite Award. So, as I mentioned, it's a very our big pleasure to welcome you, Rachel. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass the word for you.
Thank you very much for having me. And as you mentioned, Cecilia, the SWE committees are always looking for an increase in their representation on those committees across all groups and folks with all different backgrounds. So everything that I'm sharing, any of these committees is open to any SWE member around the world. So if there is any particular thing that you're most interested in, please reach out and I will help connect you with the current leadership, although I've included all of their names and pictures so you can find them. And right now is actually the perfect time to be giving this presentation because the current call for leads across all of these committees and coordinators and other SWE groups is out, and it will be open for a few more days. And then shortly after that call closes, the general call for members of these committees and groups comes out. You can join a SWE committee at any point in time, but this particular call is when a lot of folks are able to express particular interest, and committee leaders are especially looking for opportunities to bring new members in and to have the diversity of their teams increase. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. If you could go to the next page. I personally like to start every SWE meeting that I lead with a reminder about why we're all involved in the Society of Women Engineers. And looking at this chart, it really focuses on what SWE's mission is to empower women to achieve their full potential in careers as engineers and leaders, and expand the image of the engineering and technology professions as a positive force in improving the quality of life, and to demonstrate the value of diversity and inclusion. And I like to level set every meeting that I lead with that, because it really is important to remember why we're all here and why we're all committed to this organization. And then just a reminder about our vision and strategic goals, and then our core values of integrity, an inclusive environment, mutual support, professional excellence, and trust. And that's something that we really work to ensure are demonstrated by all of our members and in all of our committees and groups across the society. So just something I like to start our meetings with. If you go to the next page, we'll talk a little bit about the SWE organizational structure, just so that you have an idea of how all of these leadership roles and groups within the society can help you navigate a path to broader society leadership. So for example, if you wanted to be SWE president at one point in time, what different roles might you be able to take to get there? So next slide. Yes, thank you. The SWE Board of Directors is the operational and policy setting body of the organization, and we all have a fiduciary responsibility, which means we actually have some legal obligations, duty of care, duty of trust, and some other legal requirements around being on the board of directors and leading the society. There are 4 officers, myself as president, Dana Johnson as president-elect, Lisa Rimp as secretary, and I'll just point out Lisa is actually in Germany. So we have global representation on the board. So don't be afraid that you can't participate as a board of director member when you are in Brazil. Lindsay Roberts McKenzie is our treasurer. So those are the 4 officers of the society. And then we have 5 directors: Barbara Brockett, Carrie Greenfelder, Kalyani Malela, Jennifer Morikawa, and Karen Ramsey Idem. And each of these directors has a different set of committees and groups who report to them. And that can actually change from year to year. So we try to expose our SWE leaders to different leadership styles. And even at the director level, we're trying to help people grow and develop in their own leadership. So we don't want folks to always have the same SWE groups reporting to them. Natalie Hahn is our collegiate director. Cherie Kane is our Senate speaker. And then Karen Horting is our executive director and CEO. And Karen is staff, and so she'll be consistent from year to year as the board of directors changes. And hopefully you all got the notice for the SWE elections that just closed this past Monday, as we've elected a new set of leaders who will be coming into these roles next year. Next page, please. So I mentioned the Speaker of the Senate, Cherie Kane. The Senate is a strategic advisory body for the society, and they advise the board of directors on strategic initiatives and strategic planning. This year, they actually developed the new 5-year strategic plan for the society that was just approved by both the Senate and the board of directors, actually on Sunday. So they are also the bylaws authority for the society. The board of directors members do serve on the Senate as non-voting members. And so this is the current Senate. You can see there's 21 senators and a deputy speaker and Senate secretary. So lots of opportunities, and Cecilia has been a senator and can tell you all about what that experience was like. Page, please. If there are any questions, I can pause. Okay. We also have a board of trustees, and the board of trustees is the board of a separate organization known as the SWE Endowment Fund Incorporated. But their only stakeholder as SWE FE is the Society of Women Engineers headquarters and board of directors. So they essentially work for us and manage the assets of the SWE FE. They have their separate articles of incorporation and bylaws, and these board of trustees members are really the folks who we look to grow the endowed scholarship funds for the society, as well as the endowed awards like the Susan Genesis Upward Mobility Award, and some designated funds and the headquarters fund, which is a piece of the operational budget. All right, next slide. So this is what I know the majority of you are likely most interested in at the moment, SWE committees, and I'll also be talking about the affinity groups. So if you could go to the next page, please. The SWE committees are, the leadership of SWE committees is really based around the SWE leadership competency model. And that's true for not just the committee leaders, it's true for the board of trustees members, it's true for the senators. It's something that the nominating committee looks for all of the elected roles, and something that we look for on the board of directors as we're selecting who the next committee leaders will be. So if you're not familiar with the leadership competency model, there are these particular areas: business acumen, communication, coaching, mentoring, and sponsorship, diversity and inclusion, leadership, and self-management and development. And I included a link at the very back of the presentation to the SWE leadership competency model as a resource. And there's a lot of really great information on how you can evaluate whether you are novice or mid-level or expert in these areas. And then links to training that we have in the Advanced Learning Center, and other opportunities to develop your skills in these areas. And you don't have to be an expert in every single one of them to be a SWE leader. A lot of the committees will help you develop your competency in specific areas. Well, I'll try and touch on that as we go through and talk about the committees specifically. Next page, please. So general requirements to be on a SWE committee or participate in any of these groups: you have to be a member in good standing, have general SWE knowledge, have been engaged and involved in a few events, gone to conference potentially, but none of those are really required other than you know what SWE is and you are passionate and committed to the mission. Having good interpersonal skills, good communication skills, being effective in team environments. Over the last few years, we've had a significant increase in our virtual activities across the society, but our SWE committees and groups have really always had that virtual component. And so our members have been able to participate on these groups from anywhere in the world. And then prior leadership experience is always helpful, but is not a hard requirement. Next. And then some additional things to lead a SWE committee. So if you wanted to, for example, put your name in the hat for being the lead of the SWE Next committee, for example, you might have to have particular skill across, you should have skills across all of the SWE leadership competencies, but have advanced or expert level skills in competencies that are specifically applicable to that committee that you are most interested in. So the example that I'll use in this case is to be the chair-elect of the finance committee, for example. You really should have an advanced or expert level in the financial acumen competency, and an advanced or expert level in the business competency, for example. Next, please. So we do have 5 standing committees, and these are outlined in the society's bylaws. the audit committee, the bylaws committee, ethics committee, finance committee, and nominating committee. And the chair-elects of each of these committees are slated by the nominating committee and then are elected by the membership of the entire society. A lot of these are really governance committees. As you look at them, hopefully you can see it's really all about SWE governance and adhering to legal aspects for the society. So we're legally obligated to have an audit committee that reviews all of SWE's finances and works with an audit firm to develop the tax forms that we have to file as an organization. So to be on the audit committee, you should have a really high level of skill in the financial acumen competency. Our bylaws committee is the group that recommends and advises the Senate on bylaws changes or potential bylaws changes. Anyone in the society can suggest an update or an amendment to the bylaws, and they can work with the bylaws committee to move that through to the Senate for consideration. And so the bylaws committee are very good at the communication competency, I would say. The ethics committee is a group that looks at all of the particular complaints that might come in about violations of our member code of conduct. So not necessarily if there's a disagreement between SWE members, but if someone has potentially violated our core values or our code of conduct, violated our articles of incorporation, or in some cases, some of our policies and procedures, the ethics committee would be looking at that potential complaint and potentially opening up an investigation. Our finance committee, this is another one where you should have high competency or be looking to develop competency as a member in the financial acumen, or the business acumen. They will work on the society's budget. We have a 3-year rolling budget. So if that's something that's of interest to you or learning about how SWE is spending its money, the finance committee might be a good spot for you to look at. And then our nominating committee, we have a chair-elect of the nominating committee who is selected by the society, but then there are an additional 5 to 8 members of the nominating committee who are selected each year through the call for leaders. So if you're interested in serving on the nominating committee, that's a good one to look at the application form right now. And they are really responsible for vetting and slating the next set of society leaders. So all of those board of directors and trustees and senators that I mentioned earlier. And I know Cecilia is on the nominating committee right now, so if you have any specific questions about what that experience is like, she's a good person to talk to. So in the next set of charts, I have it broken out so you can see the role, what particular group, coordinator, committee it is, their current leader, their leader-elect. Each of them has a board of directors liaison and a headquarters liaison. So this is essentially your legend for the next few charts. So I talked about a lot of these committees already. So the audit committee, currently led by Libby Taylor, and the chair-elect is Nelia Mazula. The investment committee is not one I've mentioned before, but that is a committee that really manages the investment portfolio strategy for the society, and the policy documents associated with our longer-term investments. And that's led by Lindsay Roberts McKenzie, the society's treasurer, as the chair. And this particular committee is limited in who can join. It's made up of board of directors members, as well as board of trustees members and headquarters staff. And they report, all of these committees on this page report to me as the society president. The Ethics Committee, led by Hope Schwalz right now, and Elise Stouffer is the chair-elect. The Ethics Committee is interesting. Some of the requirements for being the chair and chair-elect for ethics in particular are that you have to have held a previous society leadership role. And that's just because of needing to know the policies and procedures to a fairly high level of depth. But anyone can be on the committee if you're interested. The nominating committee, currently led by Heather Bernardin, and the chair-elect is Brittany Elko. And then our teller, the current teller is Tracy Lasker-Levy, and Shirisha Damajuro is the teller-elect. And so they work with the company who we've hired to count all of our ballots, and they have a pretty intense period of time right now as we are going through the election process, but it's a lower level of commitment for the rest of the year. So I know some of the questions might be around level of commitment for each of these committees, and it really depends on what is going on for that particular period of time. The nominating committee, for example, has a very significant time commitment in the early part of SWE's fiscal year. So I would say between August and December, or even early January, the nominating committee has a lot of work that they are doing. And then as we move later into SWE's fiscal year, it's not quite as much work because they're not vetting all of the potential candidates, but there's still they're doing things like updating the election manual and other work. So there is a continuous flow of work. It's just a peak at the beginning of the fiscal year, and then it would taper off. Ethics committee, it depends on the number of complaints that come in. Audit committee, there's a lower level of work at the beginning of the fiscal year, but then between January and March, they're doing a very in-depth review of the work that the audit firm has conducted. And so their high level of effort, I would say, is mid-fiscal year. Next. So Bylaws Committee, currently led by Gail Dyer. Swama is the chair-elect. They report to our Society Secretary, Lisa Rimp. Their level of work, I would say, can also vary throughout the year based on how many bylaws amendments are being considered. Finance Committee has a fairly standard level of work throughout the entire fiscal year. They're looking at the income and expenses of the society on a monthly basis. That group is led by Carol Weber this year. Anna Sparks is the chair-elect, and they report to Lindsay Roberts-McKenzie as the treasurer. And then we have our program development grants. Currently, that program is led by Catherine Gamble as the coordinator, and Danu is the coordinator-elect, and they also report to the treasurer. The program development grants group has a really cool job in the society, I would say. Different groups will put in requests for funding for professional development events or for outreach events, and they get to see all of those proposals that are coming in and award grants of money for sections or groups to put those events on. And so their workload is probably a little heavier in the earlier part of the fiscal year as folks are planning out their whole year of events. But really it will depend on how many requests come in. And they have a set budget for how much money they can, how many dollars they can award for each grant throughout the year. All right, so all of these groups report to Karen Hording as our executive director. So our Integrated Marketing Advisory Board is really looking at how can SWE market itself across all platforms of social media, all types of new marketing areas that are coming on board. And they work a lot with our marketing firm, the David James Group, to really develop materials for our marketing events and practices. So that's a really interesting group that I would say has sometimes a lot of work and sometimes not as much work, depends on the year. Government relations and public policy at the moment is very focused on U.S. government relations and public policy. I think there is an opportunity there for us to grow our efforts and to engage with governments across the world. But at the moment, it is focused on U.S. government relations and public policy. And this coordinator and coordinator-elect worked with Karen on our U.S. Capitol Hill Days visits. Our editorial board is led by Cervanza, and she is really working with Karen and Ann Perusic to ensure that our SWE magazine is of the highest quality that it can be. There is a full board that advises the society on the magazine's content and writes articles for it. The conference advisory board is looking specifically at the annual conference. That's led by Nadia Best this year. And this is one where we have a lot of CPC company or corporate partnership council company representation, as well as volunteers from around the society to say, what can we do to improve the quality of content for our annual conference? What types of sessions would be best suited? What are the best ways to get after the technical content, collegiate competitions, and those sorts of things. And then we mirror that to some extent for all of our We Local groups. So we have 3 We Local advisory boards, one for North America, one for India, and one for Europe. And I can see this potentially growing in the future to represent the different regions that we have around the world for SWE as we grow our We Locals to have a stronger presence throughout the world. And they do very similar things to the annual conference advisory board focused on content for the We Locals. Our Women in Academia Committee is really focused on anyone who is in academia. So the folks in that group are looking across what can SWE do to support those who are working at colleges and universities, because they have a different set of interests that are not necessarily the same as those of us who are working in industry. We want to make sure that we're supporting them and their needs. And so the Women in Academia Committee will advise us on what can be done differently for women in academia, what are their needs. Right now we have a graduate member coordinator and coordinator-elect, and they're focused on graduate members of the society, graduate student members. And we have a lot of different types of graduate students. Some are working full-time while they're getting their graduate degree. Others are pursuing research and a PhD thesis, for example. And so graduate members are an interesting part of the society because they can align either more with the professional groups as far as career-focused areas, or they can align more with the women in academia and the research-focused. Also for the collegiate, typically undergraduate level, we have a leadership development program with different track coordinators and coordinator-elects, which you can see there. And anything that touches a graduate student or a collegiate member is reporting through to our collegiate director, Natalie Hahn. We have a representative to ABET, which is a US-based accreditation program for colleges and university programs in engineering and other areas, but we focus on engineering. So Janet Ferrarni is our rep to ABET. And then on the membership side, this is a broad committee that covers all of the society's leadership. And I know that they in particular have been doing a lot of work to try and expand what it means to be a committee with global members as the membership committee, and what can they do to better support our global members. I just realized that I did not find a picture for Vanessa, so I'll have to send you an updated version of this deck. All right, so some of our other committees. Our outreach committee is really focused on our outreach, particularly our parent programs and our pre-college programs in outreach that are not our SWE Next program, because you notice right next to outreach is our SWE Next committee. So outreach is going to be looking at what can we do to encourage our sections and our SWE groups to have outreach events. What can we do to ensure that parents and educators are being exposed to our outreach events as well? And our SWE Next group committee is really going to be focused on that SWE Next program, which, for those of you who aren't aware, is a type of SWE membership for anyone who is basically ages 5 to 18, pre-college, before they've decided if they want to study engineering, but we're trying to encourage them to study engineering. And that committee puts on really cool events through social media primarily, different challenges and competitions. They also have a set of awards that they give, SWE Next awards that you might have seen at the annual conference. And then they also help with the SWE Next clubs that are set up at different primary and secondary schools. Leadership coaching is our primary connection with our sections and affiliates around the world. They are also doing a lot to increase their connection with the affiliates, as I mentioned, that are outside of the United States, and they have folks who are primarily focused on engaging with members outside of the United States. And so I would encourage you all to reach out to Ashita or to Leslie in particular if you have experience in being a coach or a particular depth in a leadership competency that you think would be valuable to all of the rest of the society's members, and you can help work with sections and affiliates. The Leadership Coaching Committee does have its own application to becoming a coach, and that's something that is open all the time, and they do a selection each year. We have a scholarship coordinator that is really just responsible for working with our headquarters staff to update our scholarship forms and consider what we can do to expand scholarships globally. Right now, they are very focused within the United States, or schools within the United States, I should say. Our curriculum committee is looking across all of the society's offerings as far as professional development and learning opportunities, and developing suggestions for new content. We're pulling a lot in from the sessions that are presented at annual conference and at the WE Local conference. And that's a really great one. I know they've been spending a lot of time looking at doing translations of material. So things will be translated into different languages in the Advanced Learning Center to really say, how can we best meet our members where they're at in their primary language to ensure that we're providing a really great, valuable experience for each one of our members. And then our Awards and Recognition Committee manages all of the major society awards that you'll see at annual conference and at the WE Local conferences. And they're looking at a gap analysis right now to say what's missing, what can we do differently, and what can we potentially move into a different type of format, for example. So there's a lot of really interesting, both tactical execution of judging of those awards, and then strategy for how we can do things different. Awards and recognition, I would say, has two peaks in terms of how much work it has going on. Early in the fiscal year, we have the deadline for our WE Local awards, and so they'll have a peak in the early part of the fiscal year associated with that effort. And then at the end of March, our society awards applications are due, and so they'll also have a peak in the April and May timeframe as they're working through those. they've got a pretty consistent level of effort in awards and recognition, and then the peaks. Similarly, Outreach, SWE Next, and leadership coaching and curriculum, I would say, all have fairly level amounts of work across the entire fiscal year. Scholarships is more phased towards the end of the fiscal year, so between March and June. And then our affinity groups, which are an incredibly important part of our society, and the leaders of each of these affinity groups are critical to our growth and development of future leaders. I'm really happy to share that there will be, starting next year, an affinity groups committee. And so there will be a committee chair and chair-elect for all of the affinity groups. And then the plan is to still have a lead for diversity and inclusion and a lead for business and interests. And then obviously all of the leaders of each of these affinity groups would be members of that committee. But really, we're trying to put some more of that governance and structure around the committee based on response and feedback that we've had from those leaders, saying they really would like that to help with coaching and development, and to make it very clear that it's part of our overall leadership pipeline for the society. We have a extensive and continuing to grow number of affinity groups. Hopefully you all have seen some of these and are members of some of these groups. They are most active, I would say, on social media, although we are looking at different platforms within SWE where we might be able to transition some of their community focused efforts. And to me, this is really one of the best parts of SWE. These affinity groups are really all about growing community and developing community and finding people who have shared interests with you as a SWE member, where you can get advice and recommendations. One of the newer ones, our technical career path, I know has been very focused on, we talk so much about women moving into leadership positions within their organizations. And when we say that, we typically mean, intentionally or not, management positions, people management positions. And the technical career path group is really focused on how can we ensure that women are equally represented as technical fellows at their companies, chief engineers, chief architects, right? Senior technical leaders that are not necessarily people managers. Okay. Right, so I mentioned at the beginning, our FY23 call for leadership positions is currently out. I just wanted to highlight which chair-elect positions are open, coordinator and coordinator-elect. The fact that we have our nominating committee members call is a part of this particular call for leadership. And then we are looking for a new SWE representative to ABET this year. This particular call will close on the 1st of April this year at 23:59 Central Time in the United States. So it's an online application, and there's a link to it in the resources page at the end of this presentation. And then, as I mentioned, the general call for members of these groups is going to come out once this call completes. So we do things in order. So that this will close, and then that next call will open. And then just some general resources. If you go to SWE.org about SWE governance committees, and it's a bit of a trail to get down there. There'll be all of this information. You'll be able to find the contact information for each one of these leads if you have specific questions or you want to reach out, find out what it's like for them personally to be in that role. We have a committee leadership position description this is a document that describes all of the leadership positions and the competencies that each group is looking for in particular, and what competencies you'll use most frequently in that group. So say you wanted to grow your your leadership strategy, what group might you look for to grow that leadership strategy competency? And then the link to the application, both for the FY23 chair-elect, coordinator-elect, and then the committee member application. That committee member application one, that link might not actually be active yet, just to warn you. And then the competency model, which has a lot more detail about each of the competencies that I very briefly went through. So with that, I wanted to open it up for questions. I saw some of there was questions coming in on the chat, but I wanted to make sure we had time to talk through those.
That was great, Rachel. Thank you very much. We realized how many opportunity we have out there, because it was like a lot of committees, a lot of affinity groups. So if you're more on the technical side, if you're more on, like in the soft skills, there is opportunity in all those places. I just realized I didn't introduce myself to this team. I don't think everyone knows me. So yeah, Rachel mentioned at the beginning, I'm Cecilia Breda. It's probably showing for you Murilo Batistella. That's my husband. I don't know why I log in with his name, but I'm Cecilia Breda. And I'm currently the Brazil ambassador. And as Rachel mentioned, I'm part of the nomination committee. So if you wanted to know more information about the nomination committee, I can help with that. I also was part of the Senate for about 6 years. So if you also have questions on that, I can help supporting information on that perspective. And I was part of the editorial board for 2 years as well. So for those, I have a little bit more to share and help. But if you have questions about any other ones, you can also contact me, contact SWE Brazil on Instagram or email, and we can also help. But now you have Rachel here, and if you have questions of like any committee or opportunity to participate, feel free to bring it up. Just open your camera or just type in the chat, and we can talk about the questions. I saw Ju have posted some links on the website here, and Flavia as well, to help guiding the team on the information that Rachel shared. So any questions for Rachel?
I will just say, you don't have to have been a member of every single one of those committees to be on the board of directors or to be on the Senate or to be the society president. I have only been a member of a few of those committees. So don't feel like you have, there is, as Cecilia said, there are so many. Please do not feel like you have to, like, it's not a checkbox, or you don't have to do all of them.
So the deadline for the application is April 1st, correct?
If you wanted to put in to be a chair or a chair-elect for those groups, yes, that is April 1st.
Okay. For member?
To be a member, you can ask to join a committee at any point throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
You can reach out to the current lead of the group, but a lot of folks join committees at the beginning of the fiscal year. That application should open probably around April 3rd, and it'll also be open for about a month. So it'll close approximately on May 1st.
Okay. Well, I'm Juliana Dagnes. I'm member of a membership committee, actually, since 2019. So if anyone has any question to me, feel free to ask as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm sure there are several of you who have more specific experience on some of these committees than I do. So thank you for sharing that, Juliana.
That's great, Ju. Thank you for bringing that up. Do we have any other people that is part of a committee currently? I know we had Tamidis, but she's not in the meeting with us today. Tamidis was also part of a committee. Is there anybody else that's part of a committee or an affinity group?
I remember I entered in some groups in Facebook, but I'm not so sure if they have other ways of meeting between themselves, but probably, I don't know if Latin American group or something like this. But since I don't use so much Facebook, I'm not that involved.
That's something we've heard from a lot of folks is they are looking for a way to engage outside of social media, which is why we're looking at what options are available.
Makes sense. Yeah. I have one question. When you mentioned the group called Integrated Marketing Advisory Board, and you mentioned that they work in some material for events. I don't know if it was not clear if they help to build material for the conference or something. Do they also have the responsibility of how can I say that, of thinking about marketing in terms of expanding SWE in other countries, in media, paid media to expand and this kind of thing? Because we are really thinking something here in Brazil, for Brazil, because since of course we are here for 7 years, I guess, the first section here in Brazil, but we have lots of space to grow, and it would be very interesting to have a Brazilian member in this committee, so that we could like give this view of the need we have for like a focused marketing program in other countries like ours, and etc. So if you could give some words about this section again.
Yeah, so they are not responsible for creating any of the marketing materials. We actually have we pay for a company to create our marketing materials, but they advise that, they advise on all of that. And so I don't know that they have anyone from outside of the United States on that group at the moment, but I think that that is a really good idea and a really excellent point about the marketing is going to need to be different in each of the areas where SWE is trying to grow. And so having someone who is local to the area to advise on what the best marketing techniques are for that area is critical. So yeah, I'm actually going to take a note of that and talk to Karen Hording about it. So thank you.
Yeah, because it's like a sequence of things, and not always is actually a sequence, but things that run in parallel. So, for example, you mentioned about the We Locals, and of course, we want to bring it to Brazil next year, I hope. But I mean, we don't have the numbers yet, and we are trying to boost it and accelerate this year now. And one of the things we are doing is actually we are using the section budgets that we are gathering from all the sections we have here in Brazil to add in social media to accelerate the expansion of SWE here in Brazil. But it would be very interesting for us if we could have kind of help from these committees, and of course that I suggest that anybody from our team here should go and be on this committee, so that we could bring this view, this outside view.
Absolutely. That's, yeah. I didn't realize that you all were spending part of your budget doing that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that as well, because I think that there are lessons learned that committee could certainly share, or connections with our marketing firm that would be valuable. So I will take that back to Karen.
And as Flavia mentioned, Rachel, we're really targeting for that We Local in Brazil. This year we're planning for another local workshop. So the team is putting together. We have done the last 2 years online. Previous to that, we did local 2 workshops. So this will be our 5th one. And we have been talking with Karen Horth and just like trying to get this momentum of having the We Local here in the near future. So very excited for that.
I am too. I have not been to Brazil. I would love to join you all for that.
I would also like to highlight other committees that I found very interesting for us. If we could find members here watching this, watching the recording or here live. Uh, some of the groups that are related to universities, like the graduate member, the women in academia, and I guess one or other two, uh, because it's currently one of our pain points here, like how uh, to to show to them the value of joining SWE with us. And sometimes they have their own groups that they do like some very local activities and etc. because they don't see the value of integrating a bigger thing, because they don't see this bigger thing here in Brazil yet like it is in US. So also the scholarship was very interesting, and it would be awesome if we had some member, not necessarily in the leadership of those committees, because I guess it's a big step for us, but at least integrating as a member, and very, very interesting.
Now
Yeah.
on the scholarships piece, I would recommend there's a call that comes out for scholarship judges, and that's a really great way to start your involvement with the scholarship group. And in general, I would say for FY22, reaching out to Karen Ramsey Idem about that particular question of engaging with universities and colleges within Brazil, and how you can effectively work with them and tell them about how important it is to join an organization beyond something at their local university level. She's a good contact, and that's something that she and Natalie Hahn, as the collegiate director, have been specifically thinking about this year.
And in the past, we did have a conversation about the scholarship of, like, if a company, let's say I work for John Deere, for example, they are supporting, they're giving a scholarship or they're supporting something, and they wanted to say, okay, I want to part of this to go to Brazil or go to India or go. So I know we were exploring that. So that would be really nice to, I don't know how it is because it has been a while that I've been disconnected, but I know that was something we're investigating to bring that. We kind of, because we were looking forward to bring something like that to Brazil, as Flavia mentioned, to even have more engagement from collegiates. So we can say, okay, we have scholarships, this is how we can offer, this is how it works, so people get more incentives and understand better of what they can get, like out of that being one plus thing, I would say, to add to be part of the organization. So, and on our other ones, we do have leaders here, like for example, for awards, we have people in this call that leads awards teams, like not in the committee for SWE, but they do local ones. So there will be one more step. So for people to get involved, they already do local ones. So why don't I learn and do like a broad one and do for like the overall like SWE, as well as outreach. We have a lot of people here very interact with like outreach activities. So doing one more step and learning and understanding from, okay, what's going on outside of Brazil. Also bring lessons learned, what we are doing here, and kind of doing some momentum there as well. So there's a lot, as you mentioned, as well, the leadership coach committee. I see a lot of value on that one. I know we were doing a huge push, I would say 2 years ago, to have that globally. So I think that would be another amazing one for people to be part of. So there's a lot of great opportunities there. If you're in the call and you have more questions, bring to us, or bring to your affiliate leader. They can also connect you to the best people and give more information about the committees and the affiliate groups. So we're just getting close to the end here. I really wanted to thank you, Flavia, for putting this together, helping us organizing all this, and as well, Rachel, for your time, for sharing all this great information with us. We're very excited with all these opportunities that we have, and we wanted to bring that awareness for people here so they can understand what they all do and how they can better like get involved on those level of engagement as well with the organization. So thank you very much. I see we might have one more question in the last 1 minute, Carol.
It's me, sorry. I got late on the meeting. I'm sorry for that. I have one question related to the timing that we should spend in some positions. I couldn't have a lot of time to read the document. Does it mention on the document how many time that we should spend by week or by month on those activities?
So some of that will be in the document, but I would say really the best way to get that feeling of how much time per week you might spend on a particular committee is to reach out to the current committee chair or chair-elect and ask, you know, what they're seeing from their groups. Unfortunately, anything I say about my committee experience at this point is going to have been several years old, and so it might not be accurate. Cecilia can speak to you probably spend 20 hours a week in the early part of the fiscal year on nominating committee activities, but hopefully it's not nearly that many hours now that the election has concluded.
That's right. Yeah. And Rachel did mention Carol, like for all of those, what time of like what period in the year it's more like hours that you need to put effort on. So we are recording the session. So if you have a specific need, like your specific committee you're looking for, you can check that. Or if you also have like you want to know exactly, you know, how many times per week or per month or their meeting, we can help with that, finding that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Most groups don't meet. Most groups meet on a monthly cadence when it's just a standard part of the year.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I would say, you know, please consider joining some of these SWE groups. You know, we are trying, as Cecilia mentioned, with outreach. I think that's a really good example. We're trying to grow our presence globally, but we are very aware of the fact that things that we've done within the United States and that we're used to doing in the United States might not work or might not be the best approach outside of the United States. But without your voice on that committee telling us that, we won't have that insight and that feedback. And that's really critical. So please consider joining these groups, especially if you've done something at the local level. Take those lessons learned and help us do a better job across the globe.
Awesome. Thank you very much all for your participation.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.